Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Diablo 4. Today I'm back for a ranking video. This time we're taking a look at the classes, their top builds and how they compare to one another with something different. We're looking at tier 100s and Uber Lilith specifically, the highest challenges you can find in the game right now. And what's different and weird about this one in the comparisons and the rankings and all that is that absolutely every class has a build or multiple builds that crunch everything, be that tier 100s, Uber Lilith, Duriel, whatever. It feels like we have higher potential in Season 2 than ever before, so the rankings are essentially looking at each class's best build for whatever content we're looking at, and then comparing them to one another as fairly as we can. But since they all perform so well, it comes down to things like how consistent are they able to get this big damage out, how survivable, how fast are they. But with every class crushing in Season 2, this comparison is much like splitting hairs, so don't feel worried if your class isn't number 1 or whatever. Still, it's interesting to look at and discuss, so let's do that. We begin with the funny one, where the comparison between the 5 classes is laughable. Every class is crunching in single target, and so Uber Lilith has never been easier for everyone. Let's start from the bottom at number 5 though, which is Druid using a Boulder build. Yeah, a Boulder build. The single target DPS potential of this one is insane, and it's so strong that it's actually higher raw DPS than say number 4 on this list. However, it's limited hugely by the insane amount of spirit demand of the build, and you have to really commit to the build to make that work. What that means is it does lose out in other places. It's niche in its own way. There's no denying that if a boss functions like kind of a target dummy, which, you know, Duriel and Uber Lilith do, like at the start of Uber Lilith or when she's going into phase 2 specifically, there's plenty of time to build up some damage. So you can set up so hard to the point that so many boulders are flying around you that it's like a literal physical wall of these spinning rocks. In short, the new Boulder build is possible thanks to the new unique amulet in Season 2, the Dolmen Stone. This causes the boulders, while Hurricane's active, to actually rotate around you like the Twisting Blade situation for rogues, but without that, Boulder wouldn't be worth it. You could run an alternative to that in the form of Stormclaw and Tornado builds, which are both great, but they don't have as much silly DPS potential. What's impressive about this setup in Uber Lilith context though, is that so much stun was built up by the player here Responsible Tail that Lilith actually staggers very early into phase 2. During that stagger, the DPS goes so high that she melts, melting faster than her next ranking can manage it. And if you plan to farm bosses specifically, I think this is your top option, and it'll still do fine, good even, in all other content. Next up, we have the number 4 class for Uber Lilith right now. I believe this to be Bone Spear Necromancer. Because Bone Spear is back, the truth is it never actually left. While the nerfs on paper seemed insane, Season 2 provides so much potential for builds that Bone Spear is still destroying. Largely thanks to things like Tibault's Will, that unique leg, which is a main unique pick for many builds and classes due to how potent it actually is. Bone Spear relies on having high essence to maximize its damage, right? Tibault's Will provides 50 essence per dash, which you can use extremely often, so that's major. But then it also gives you 40% times improved damage to all damage types for 4 seconds after using, say, a meta dash, which you can have always. While crit and vulnerable damage were brought down to reality this season, as well as specific Bone Spear stuff, the damage output is still insane. The reason I put this above Boulder Druid, even though the Druid build technically has higher DPS potential, is that it requires a bit of setup, right? While Bone Spear is more mobile in its ability to output the damage and do it from range as well, and do it quickly. If the build reaches for Ubers, it gets even more broken with things like the Starless Sky Ring that removes any essence concern by reducing the essence costs of each Bone Spear by up to 40%. You just have to avoid using other abilities to prevent that from falling off. So one of the Necromancers to reach World First 100, Vega, has been playing the game without a 6 skill on the bar to avoid doing that. So the DPS is insane, the speed it throws it out and immediately starts bursting is insane, and you can do it so consistently that I rate it above Druid. But it's overshadowed by 3 other builds when it comes to Uber Lilith, so let's talk about that. This will be a quick one. You should have seen this coming. It's Sorcerer and the Ball Lightning build at number 3. Forget any setup or avoiding damage, forget any of it. You just jump on the boss, get everything going and spam the Ball Lightnings out, and then watch as a circle of lightning surrounds you entirely and everything near you just evaporates. It's so strong that people are confused. Like, is this an exploit? Is it broken? Is it not actually meant to work like this? It seems too good. While Bone Spear's potential feels insane, this kind of laughs at that. But outside of just raw DPS and damage, it's so survivable in a way that Bone Spear just isn't. Sorcerers and their element resistances are fantastic in Season 2, and where I needed to actually avoid damage to clear Uber Lilith on my Necromancer, Sorcerers can just stand there and go toe to toe while dealing more damage than me at the same time. So I think that's why we can safely say it's an obvious third, above Druid and Necromancer, despite how strong those classes are feeling. But what could possibly be above that? Well, 2 classes just are. At number 2 and 1, you have Rogue and Barbarian, which is dealing so much damage in burst at the start of a fight that the bosses essentially die instantly. We think it's splitting hairs to rank one over the other, it's basically irrelevant, but if I had to, I guess I would say Rogue for the number 2 spot. That is because I'm not sure it's going to stick around in the same way. For Rogue right now, it's a combination of Tibault's will and combo points, which seem to be breaking the limit of combo points as if you're using more than you should be able to at once to empower one attack. The attack people are empowering, well, that's obviously rapid fire, one of the best, if not the best, single target core skill they can pick. So you enhance the damage of rapid fire to the point that it simply one-shots anything it hits. For boss fights, that's ideal, killing Uber Lilith like it's nothing. Or any of the bosses you want to farm like Duriel, it kills Duriel so fast that he has no time to react or burrow or anything, he just dies. So clearly broken, definitely an exploit and busted, but the question is it going to stay? It's been here for long enough that we're surprised it still is. But what if it does get removed? Well, Rogue would still have a great option for boss killing in the poison version of Twisting Blades like always. For the single target purposes, you can still burn down health really quickly. The issue is you need to commit hard to single target, meaning you ignore anything like, say, survivability, which Rogue didn't have a lot of already. Dealing lots of damage, but you make yourself a bit like paper. I would say Rogue would probably be 5 or even 4th in this case on the list, pushing everyone else above that up a tier. But what comes ahead of a seemingly exploit and broken situation? Well, Barbarians. They take the top spot for a literal one-hit kill. In fact, it was Rob2628 who recently landed a single hit of over 1 billion. 1 billion in one hit. Nothing in the game will survive that. How it's working makes sense. You're stacking up Fortify, your Fury, Unstoppable with meta dashes and Tibault's Will, all your shouts, Blood Boil to get a guaranteed overpower, and all the combo basically deletes the target that you hit with that. We're seeing constant showings of over 100 million in a hit, right? But with refined builds towards 400 million consistently, which is going to one-shot most anything. In the case of Rob with that ridiculous grandfather sword, the Uber Unique, you're seeing over 1 billion. The reason this is number 1 when Rogue has similar results is because it doesn't feel like an exploit to me. It seems like what would happen if you put these things together just mathematically. Rogue is overcapping on combo points in a way that really shouldn't be able to. And while I think both are ridiculous, obviously, the Barbarian one might stick around where Rogues might not, so we'll see. So those are the rankings for Uber Lilith and boss killing in general, based on what we currently know. Again, let me stress how little there is between these classes, these builds. They're all doing really well. It's just how I would compare them if I had to. But now let's move on to the next endgame content and class comparison, the tier 100s, which are happening a lot more than, say, pre-season and season 1, since everyone has insane picks and builds for it, and even multiple builds for this content. It used to be pretty simple to look at current clear times and compare, but these days it's a lot more difficult with all of the damage everyone's doing. So now it's more about how fast you can clear and how tanky and survivable are you while doing that compared to others. Everyone can do it, so they're all good. But at number 5, I have Rogue. Without the busted rapid fire combo, which is really effective for single target burst, it's a lot less relevant for your experience in tier 100s. As you might expect then, the build that people are running is Twisting Blades with imbuements, meaning Shadow for the AoE and Poison to spread damage over time. Poison allows for damage buildup, which is a lot better in Season 2, especially relevant with that new unique ring tied to this. It also has more relevant single target DPS when you're running Poison, of course, which is really important in those longer boss encounters where the DPS over time is really going to matter. If you have X-Files, then that new unique ring, it causes your damage over time to AoE burst, which is incredible for not just your AoE burst for mob clear, but also obviously single target. So you can fly through the dungeons literally because you're so quick, but compared to the silliness of other classes right now, I did feel like their showing was maybe 5th place worthy. They can be blown up if they're not careful, and things get hairy really quick when you're forced to fight in melee and don't have the survivability like Druid or Barbarian. Overall though, I found Rogue to be an effective clearer for your tier 100s. You just have to play smart and fast, which to be fair, is how a Rogue should play. Next up 4 though, we have the Druid. Honestly, in this case, one build doesn't really cover it. You know, Pulverize is going to work well, the Boulder build can be really good, but I found most people playing either Tornado or specifically Stormclaw. Cotton, when I asked him, lent more on Stormclaw, and I can see why. It uses the unique, the Great Staff of the Crone, which turns your claw into a storm skill, casting Storm Strike at the same time. So as a build, it's surprisingly tanky, which is fantastic for a tier 100. Despite the fact that it's more melee, you can actually play it at more of a mid-range, slapping the front target of a pack, spreading the damage throughout, reducing the incoming damage because of it. And because you've got nice quick base move speed, you're able to move around and group things up, target the right person, and so on. And it has great damage output, which is exactly what you're looking for in a dungeon clear. It's not heavily dependent on spirit like Boulder is by comparison, and it's got the utility in a knockback, an AoE stun, maybe a heal option, so when things get tough, you actually have multiple ways of dealing with it. The clears I've watched have been careful and considered though, none of this blind running through the dungeon killing anything that looks at you, so compared to Rogue, it actually is a bit similar, but with more survivability baseline and looks a lot easier to play, which puts it at number 4 for me. Third then above that for me has to be Necromancer. Necromancer and Bone Spear are a match we can't seem to escape, because it's simply so effective at bursting things down from a safe, long range where you can kill things essentially off screen. That alone means it can clear a tier 100 even if it was super squishy, which it can be, but you can swap the build around to reduce your outrageous output and have more survivability, which is what I did to clear a tier 94 when testing the build. Compared to Druid and Rogue, I think even though it's less survivable, it makes up for it with its outrageous high damage and long range. It's memed on a bit actually as the one button build, and that's understandable. With that uber unique stylus sky, it essentially encourages you not to use any other buttons but Bone Spear, so can't really argue with it. But you've got AoE stuns from long range, AoE slows and damage reduction. You've got iframes in the form of Blood Mist if you need it. There's plenty of options depending on the situation to get out of a sticky spot, but to be honest, that won't happen all that much when you're killing things super quick from super far away. When the build reaches its silly level, when you do have your uniques and even ubers, it becomes a point and click steamroll, so the potential is very high even in a tier 100. You might be wondering, what about Infamist? Well, to be honest, that is a great build and will work great for a tier 100 as well. It's just the damage over time effect isn't nearly as strong as Bone Spear when it comes to single target boss dealing, and Bone Spear by comparison is a lot more bursty for killing nasty elites before they can even do anything. If you were doing a hardcore playthrough, I'd definitely go with Infamist. It's a lot safer, but Bone Spear can clear way faster. But above that, number 2, I think it's Barbarians. This one's funny because every build is nearly enough the same thing with Barbarians. The shouts and the playstyle, they all feel very similar. The top pick for a tier 100 though, well, I think it's Hammer of the Ancients. While Whirlwind is incredible for mob clear, it's terrible by comparison at single target, and in a tier 100 there's going to be strong high health elites as well as these spongy bosses that it really struggles with. Having said that, nothing's going to stop Whirlwind from killing the boss or everything because it's tanky and deals enough damage anyway. It just has these points where it really slows down. Meanwhile, Hammer just destroys everything in basically one hit, and you're so tanky just baseline. We have seen some ridiculous clears with small threat to the Barbarian because of it, and where many builds reach a boss and find its health a problem, the Hammer just doesn't care at all. The Barbarians can run into big packs of mobs where other builds just can't and take it all on. And like I said, Barbarians have great options in the end game for a tier 100. Say the double swing build, that works kind of similar but is super fast paced and fun, just with a smaller AoE, which makes it a bit more awkward for mob clear. But overall, Hammer of the Ancients has come across to me as the most consistent, strongest pick, and it's just crazy in Season 2. However, that brings us finally to number 1 with our last class to mention, and that of course is Sorcerer with its insane ball lightning build. Where I've been talking to people about builds today, watching streams, watching videos and clears, everyone has had to pace themselves in some way, pull smartly, kill the pack before it reaches them or even kills them. Even Barbarians have to be smarter than Sorcerers in terms of when they're dealing with these encounters. But the ball lightning Sorcerers, it's like they're barely paying attention. They just jump in and kill everything, walking through while they take minimal damage and kill everything nearly instantly anyway. It's insane. You've got shields to protect yourself while your balls of lightning circle you, so just running through, everything just dies as you pass by. It might be up for debate what, say, the version of this build will be, like what the 6th slot is going to be used on, people like Arc Glash or Lightning Spear or Ice Blades, but it seems to barely matter. The ball lightning does so much on its own and it rotates around you so nothing could avoid it. It's not like you even have to aim it. It seems to me like the Sorcerer's biggest challenge in a tier 100 is finding the end boss or whatever. It's funny. So yeah, I feel like they stand at the number 1 spot right now when it comes to tier 100s. Pretty clearly. But there you have it. That is my overview of the current tier 100s and boss killing situations. Like I said throughout the video though, please take the rankings with a strong grain of salt. Everyone is destroying everything. We should be very pleased with how our class is performing in Season 2, whatever you're playing. The fact that some people have multiple builds to consider is a surprise and appreciated, and I feel shocked to say that I think Season 3 actually has a lot of potential if they keep going in this direction. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.